welcome everybody to our day 3 of the Scrapbooking Fun Summit, and another interview that we're doing today with Brandi from Stamp Me Some Love. And before we get started to get know more about Brandi, and I know many of you card makers know Brandi, we just want to thank our sponsors. So our sponsor for the event is KB Riley, sorry, I'll get that right by the end of this day. And our day sponsor, so KB Riley is a sponsor for the whole event, and we had a great discussion with Karen on the first day, and that video is live for you guys, and she showed tons of her products, so take a look at that. And our sponsor for today is actually Tracy. So Tracy runs the Embellished Connections. The Embellished Connections is a Canadian company who loves to bring in all interesting supplies. She does local crops. We're in Ottawa, Canada, but also Tracy loves to find really unique things, and she is the one who finds all our beautiful speakers for our summit. So she likes to find the ones that not everybody has yet and bring some people in. So we have speakers from all over the world, which is one of the things that Tracy brings to the summit, and it's great to have her here. So that is sponsors for today, and we want to introduce you to Brandi. And like I said, if you're a card maker, you probably know Brandi. If you're not a card maker, because we are the Scrapbooking Fun Summit, we're going to get to know Brandi a little better. So let me switch our screens a little bit. And Brandi, just to start off, for those who don't know you, where are you in the world?
I am in Kentucky, Versailles, Kentucky in the States.
There you go. And this is an easy question for you, but it might not be. I'm going to make an assumption before I ask the question, which is not a good thing to do. Are you a card maker, scrapbooker, multimedia? What is your heart?
I am pretty much a card maker, but I am getting into some acrylic stuff. I don't know if you can see my turtle back here. I painted that, so I'm kind of getting into other things, but card making is my main passion.
Excellent. And how did you get started in that passion?
Well, I've always been into crafting. That goes way back to when I was a kid in my grandma's basement. We would paint ceramics together because that was her hobby. I've done cross-stitching, all kinds of things, scrapbooking even. When scrapbooking first came out, worked at a scrapbooking store. And basically moved all my scrapbooking supplies from house to house to house, and kind of set it down because of the age of digital photos. I just could not keep up with the scrapbooks. So I eventually got rid of all of my supplies and gave them to the Girl Scout that lived next door. And then about a year later, I was online and I saw a card on Pinterest. And it was a very specific card because it had this embossed look on it. It was It was a happy birthday embossed panel. And I was obsessed on how did they do that. So I did some research and discovered it was an embossing folder and that you ran it through a die cut machine called, at the time, I didn't know that there were other types out there, but it was called Big Shot. And then I discovered that Stampin' Up! Sold the Big Shot, and I reached out to a local demonstrator to see if I could just come in and test the equipment, because I had never done anything like that before. So she said, why don't you come to one of my classes? I was like, oh, okay, fine. So I went to her class, made my very, very first card, and then also got to test the embossing machine. And to say that I was sort of hooked is an understatement, because I signed up to be a demonstrator that night. And then I just started kind of growing from there. I started teaching classes in my home and selling Stampin' Up! Product. And I kind of got to the point where, like, I really would like to make a career out of doing creative stuff. I'm a sign language interpreter by trade, and I've done lots of salesy type businesses in my past, but I really wanted to focus on being creative. And unfortunately, Stampin' Up's model didn't kind of work for me in terms of actually making money. I spent more money than I could make. And so I decided to kind of go out on my own and, formed affiliate relationships with all kinds of different brands, and that kind of just expanded my horizons, and started teaching. And of course, we have our own Card Maker Success Summit, and so that's how it got started. That's kind of a long answer to your question.
No, it's a great answer to your question, because people, you see somebody and you don't necessarily know how they evolved into this, and the stories we get every time we ask that question are really interesting. Some of them are happenstance, some of them are a life a life occurrence where they just wanted to capture it. Some of them are kids, there's lots of different reasons we all get into this thing. So
And
it's
sorry,
great.
I find it really interesting that it's like you said you started the scrapbooking and then it's like, no, that's not for you, which is fine. And it sounds like you got rid of everything and then was like, whoa, whoa, right? I'm getting it all back. It just sounds
Yes,
interesting.
absolutely. I mean, I literally went
Hmm.
from boxes and boxes of paper. I used to have a business, a die cut business, if you can believe, back when scrapbooking became the craze.
Mhm.
And my partner at the time would design the die. And this was back when we used the AccuCut
I
roller type dies
Yep.
with the dies that were this thick. And so we had a connection in Mexico that would create the die, and then we also bought stuff from like Ellison and stuff like that, and then we sold die cuts to scrapbooking stores. Our model was a little bit more specific in that die cut stores could or scrapbook stores could buy specific colors of those die cuts, because usually at that time they would just buy die cuts and it'd be just random colors and random cardstock. So we tried to make a go of it. It was not the success that we were hoping to, but so I had all of those supplies and boxes upon boxes of cardstock. And yeah, I literally got rid of everything. A couple years later, I was like, hmm, I really need something to do. And so
Good.
when I saw that, and it's funny, that particular embossing folder, I didn't know who made it. Later found out it was a retired one from Cuttlebug, I believe.
Okay.
And a friend of mine, just a year or two ago, she had a whole bunch of stuff that she gave me, and that embossing folder was in that stash. And so I have kept that embossing folder. I'm never going to get rid of it because that's the embossing folder. I don't know if you guys remember. It's the embossing folder that had happy birthday in all
Okay.
kinds of different fonts, and they were all kind of turned around and stuff like that. And if I had it with me
Okay.
right now, I would show
I mean,
you.
I can picture what you mean. I may not be that same brand, but I know what you're
Yeah.
talking about, the way it would
Yeah,
look.
it was
Yeah.
very specific. And then, of course, I was obsessed with seeing all the cards that people had made with that embossing folder. So, yeah.
You need to frame it and put it on your wall. By the way, your room is beautiful. Your crafting room
Thank
is
you.
Yes.
I actually just renovated this summer, and you can still see that I've got some stuff to do. Like we've got some holes that we patched up, and I need to paint. And I plan to paint my logo right up there
so
because
nice.
I stand on the other side of that island, and that's where I film from.
I thought you were in your kitchen. I'm like, no, she's not in her kitchen. That's not cool.
No,
Uh-huh.
I do have a baker's rack right here for it's for like baking sheets, but I have turned it into my drying rack.
Mm.
So I've got little half pans and full size pans where I put my art and cards that I
Hmm.
want to dry and stuff. Because before I had my studio renovated, I had every vertical surface covered with crap, and or if I was working on a project, I had stuff drying everywhere. And so the goal is to try to prevent as much stuff on vertical surfaces. So I invested in a commercial baker's rack, I guess is what they call it. And I've been doing stuff with the acrylic, and it's kind of nice to be able to just put it in there so it dries and it's not taking
Mhm.
up space on the countertops.
It is awesome.
Hmm.
Several people have the embossing folder that you're mentioning, so there you go. You're
Oh
not the
yeah,
only one with that one. So,
cool.
do you want to chat a bit about your project that you shared in the?
Sure. So the card that I submitted was using alcohol ink and then, of course, stamps and dies. And one of my passions, actually, I've got something I can show you. I create these patterns with alcohol ink. And I
Hmm.
think as a scrapbooker, you could definitely use this just as a background, as opposed to what I did was cut it up and use it, for a card and stuff. But I've become sort of obsessed with this type of pattern or whatnot. And to the point where I actually am wanting to take this image, and I went down to my local printer and had them scan it, and it's digitized, but now they've printed it on paper just for me to look at it. So I'm thinking about actually taking this and then putting it on other products like notebooks or little zipper bags, and put some sort of text on it. So
I would buy a notebook in that color. That's you got all my favorite tones in
Oh, yeah?
in that color with it. And Tracy and I often end up wearing shirts of that color at the same time. So it's both our colors.
And I'm obsessed with spiral notebooks. It's my thing is spiral notebooks. And if I could show you my cabinet. I've got a gazillion spiral notebooks. And so I really would like to have my own spiral notebooks with my own art. So like, this is the art on this. I didn't do this, but this is something I like. I like pretty stuff this is just my.
I'm a notebook addict too, Brandi. So I get that 100%. I like to have the fun, and I take effort in buying, but I would buy that notebook if you had that.
Okay. All right. Well, you're on. Game on. I'm going to create it and I'll sell it to you.
Well, one of our Lynn who did one of our.
That's what I'm thinking.
Did it on using, what is it called, Tracy? The spiral machine.
Yep, because I have horrible memory, and I even have one downstairs.
But she did one of her presentations.
Is it the Cinch It?
Yeah, the Cinch It.
Thank you.
She did her presentation on how to make your own notebooks as stocking stuffers.
Oh, sweet. Well, I have the VIP All Access Pass, so I'm going to go in and take a look at that.
Yeah, she was showing you how to make the covers, how to make them, and she was doing like different sizes so they could be stocking stuffers. So
now I have experimented with creating coloring books. Coloring books. Let me grab one real quick.
You can't see Brandi's passion at all, eh?
No. But you can always see when we find the thing that's that cool thing that we like to do, the making. Now we have to find it. As organized as she can't find them. That's okay.
Well, that's the thing. So I had a friend help me put everything back, and so I haven't quite found everything yet.
Someone said they loved your alcohol ink backgrounds. Very cool. I have to search for my alcohol ink so I can play.
Yeah, definitely.
Another person, just because we all do things different, it's the same. So much of the background paper is hidden. How cool? How could you balance it in a card if you used only a frame to use from the alcohol inks and save the inside to use elsewhere?
I know, Jeanette. Of course, Jeanette's asking that question. You could, take your panel and cut it down so you show more of the border. You could die cut a rectangle of that background and then use that piece. Take that out and use it for something else. So you're not basically wasting the hidden part of it. But I'm so lazy. I don't have time to do that. And then of course I store all these pieces and stuff. So then I'm like, what am I going to do?
Exactly. Well, everyone does it differently too, right? It's taking the technique that's the whole point of a summit. Now you run your own summits. It's taking what you see and making it your own, right? And doing it slightly differently and doing that. So it makes sense. I have a question. What's your favorite type of card to make?
Do you mean like technique or occasion?
Either one. Pick both. Both. We can answer both. So there you go.
Yeah, I was gonna.
Technique wise, I kind of like doing like different kinds of backgrounds. Let me pull my little.
You didn't know you were going to get your exercise on this call, did you?
Yes. Well, I have this box here that I keep all of my extra backgrounds or whatever. And so I love doing, this is distress stains, where I created the background, and then I just had a class a couple months ago about foiling, and then I foiled that image on it. Just different, like that. That's got some foil on it, with a colored background. That's another foiled one, like mixed media type stuff.
I see a theme on backgrounds.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I love doing backgrounds. I could make backgrounds all day. Just this is with a glimmer hot foil machine with spellbinders. And let's see here. Have you guys used any of the stencil butter
Okay. Yes.
from
That's
the Crafter's Workshop?
just works. Yep. Yep.
So I typically use that to make cards like this. So this was a stencil that I actually created, and then I applied the stencil butter on it. But I wanted to create just a panel that was shimmery, one solid
Okay.
color, and I can die cut different shapes out of that. These are using a gel press. You guys ever used a gel press?
Wow. Okay.
So made these from gel presses.
Somebody says, yes, I struggle with stencil butter. And I have no idea what stencil butter is, but I struggle with stencil butter. Excuse me.
I kind of am, using that whole alcohol theme. I have a class that teaches you how to create alcohol die cuts, and we created cards. Actually, I'm just, all over the place. I'm sorry. We created some die cut cards, and here's an example of that gel press. So I created the background on a gel press, and here's one that I created with the Cricut machine. I cut out the HTV, which is this gold outline, and then did a watercolor wash inside. So
nice.
Very nice.
We are going to be having, I don't know if I can say this or not. Maybe I should not say it. Well, we're going to have a super big Black Friday sale. So if anybody's interested in any of these card classes that I've been talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, Black Friday is coming. The conclusion of everything going out. Get your cards and figure out what you want to do on Black Friday.
Yeah.
So what's your favorite occasion to craft for?
Probably Christmas.
I was going to say Christmas. You have a Christmas card thing, so that makes sense.
I do. I do.
Do you actually send the cards you make? Because you do so many classes. So do you actually send cards?
Christmas cards, yes. And then, of course, my wife, let me just turn my heater off. My wife is constantly saying, of course, always last minute, which really irritates me, but she needs a birthday card for a coworker or a sympathy card for so-and-so or whatever. And I'm like, okay, when do you need it? Today. Okay, well, I might need a little bit more time. So usually what I do is I go into my stash and see if I've got something already made that I can give her. But I am the worst about giving her cards if that's crazy enough. So I try to make sure that I give her at least a birthday card and a Christmas card. But
well, it's the same as, my father was a plumber. Our toilets didn't work right. Your own family doesn't get the attention that you want. So
yeah.
Here's a question. Do you have any advice for working with embossing? I just can't get the hang of it.
So I guess it depends on what type of embossing. So are we talking dry embossing with a folder, or are we talking about heat embossing with a stamp and ink? If we're talking about stamping, my biggest advice is to make sure that you prep the paperwork or the paper before you do it. So using some sort of anti-static powder, tool, whatever, to make sure that you don't have any oil on the paper. Because when you put the powder on that cardstock, it's going to stick to whatever it's going to stick to. So having that, brushed on there, the powder, the anti-static powder before you stamp is my best recommendation. The other thing to that is to make sure that your heat tool is heated up first for a couple seconds before you apply the heat to the card.
Okay.
It will make sure that the powder melts evenly. As far as
heat embossing is what she was looking for.
Yes, she just
okay. As far as dry embossing, though, just to kind of expand on that, my best advice is to spritz the back of the card lightly with some water to kind of break up the fibers so your card doesn't break or it doesn't crack when you do it. But sometimes that can be a look, that you're going for, a distressed look.
Makes sense. Hopefully that answered your question, Lisa. just had a
I am
question.
curious.
Go ahead.
I am curious with everything because obviously, I mean, I know you love the foiling and you've got the machine that, but have you played around yet with the better press?
I have not. I have
Okay,
not.
or is that of interest to you?
At first I was like, what's the big deal? you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
And after seeing some of the stuff, I'm like, that could be interesting. So it's on my radar to invest in one. I
Hmm.
would so love it if Spellbinders would send me one for me to play with. Hint, hint. Um, but it's an expensive, investment.
Yeah,
So,
I
oh
understand.
gosh,
Just
getting into a whole other thing of tools and supplies and stuff like that. So, yeah, I'm interested in it now, but I have not played with it.
What
okay. No, I for some reason I can, from what I hear from, my clients who love their card making and that, once they try it, of course they're hooked. So I just have a
Yes,
gut feeling that I could see you doing it.
for sure.
So just,
maybe Spellbinders listening, they'll send you one, or
yeah,
Black Friday
maybe,
deals are
yeah,
coming.
that's true.
Right?
Yeah, so somebody actually ordered the better press and sent it back because I didn't want to invest in the plates. So there you go.
Okay.
It's one of
Yeah,
those things that keeps going and
that's an
going.
issue. That's an issue. Crafting is expensive.
It is. It is definitely.
Hmm.
I have a question. What is there a technique you don't like? Like you've tried it and you just don't want to do it, doesn't go with you, doesn't
Hmm. Well, I have issues with tiny die cuts.
mm-hmm.
So there are a lot of super cute dies sets from Spellbinders, and I'm just kind of nervous about going into it because my hands shake a little bit, and trying to get those little pieces in the right, in the exact right spot and stuff. But they're so darn cute. So I would probably say tiny, tiny die cuts. I like things that are a little bit bigger, a little bit easier to handle.
Okay.
And I would say as we get
Good
older, our
question.
eyesight comes into that too.
Oh, well, I didn't mention that as well. So yeah,
I was going to say that's one of those lovely things as we get older. It's like, I can't see that anymore.
right. And I have a pair of craft glasses, which I thought were
Are they
my
the
husband's
magnifying
favorite,
ones?
with the
Yeah.
magnifying lens and the little light.
Yep.
Do you
Yep.
use them?
Yeah, I do, especially when I'm trying to weed something like vinyl and trying to see all the little tiny lines and make sure I'm pulling up the little pieces. Advice for someone
Any
who like
advice for
me is
someone
working
like
19 months. What does that mean?
So
I'm
you're
not sure what the
just
19
beginning
months
to be a
means.
card maker? Is that?
Yeah, it's
Hmm.
like it's not. I was thinking 19 months was a product, and you two would understand what it was. But no,
I
no.
don't. So
But
Melanie, say more.
if you're just starting out, any advice? I guess
If you're
that's
just
what it is.
starting out, I would recommend investing in the Misty. So that's probably the aside from the die cut machine, because you almost kind of have to have a die cut machine. But my um, my recommendation for investments as far as card making goes, of course, paper. Paper goes without saying. You need good paper, and not thin paper like 65 pound. No, you need 80 pound to 110-pound paper.
Mm-hmm.
But that's consumable stuff. But as far as investment goes, your inks, of course, buy small mixer packs, as you go. I'm a big Catherine Pooler fan. You can buy the little tiny ones. But as far as big tools, my first thing is, of course, the die cut machine and then the Misty, which helps you stamp continuously on the same spot. So you don't waste a lot of material if you stamped and got it smudged, or if you stamped and it wasn't dark enough and you got to reapply ink and then you don't stamp exactly in the same spot. So I would invest in the Misty. And, if you get inclined, then you want to expand your card making. Of course, if you have a Cricut machine, you can do a whole lot more stuff with that. So that's what I would suggest.
I like that because I think there's sometimes an inclination to Cricut machines and cutting machines, but you can do a lot of crafting without a cutting machine.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I didn't use well, first of all, I didn't have a Cricut machine. I started out with a Silhouette Cameo, and I bought it specifically for paper crafting and got so frustrated because I couldn't get the cuts right. And it was tearing up paper, and I'm sure it was a user error. The only thing I could use it for was cutting vinyl. And then I got the Cricut machine, and I was very hesitant because it's a whole other machine. There's an expense to design space, if you want to have the whole access. But I dove in, and then I discovered that you can actually make HTV on cards. So like I said, use um, HTV. I create designs, I create patterns or whatever, and then I iron that onto the cardstock. And then from there, you can, color it with Copic markers or alcohol ink or what was the other? Watercoloring. So yeah.
Versatile. I'm going to say they like the better press for foiling. Whew.
Yes.
They're done for foiling, so I actually like them better.
Yeah.
Do you use the Cricut most of the time now, or do you is it something that's?
I do use it a lot.
Yeah.
I do use it a lot. And I do speak at a lot of Cricut type events. Mm-hmm. And so where everybody else is using the Cricut for, signs and different types of projects, whatever, I'm using it for card making. So I do use it a lot.
Excellent.
And that you don't see as many people using the Cricut for cards as you do, because they want it for the larger sizes, especially. So that is interesting. Yeah, more people are, using the die.
Well, I can't say that I kind of figured it out on my own. Abby Kirsten spoke at one of my summits, and she did a card with HTV and made a snowflake type card. And I was, because snowflakes are very intricate. And that was the thing that I was having problems with cutting paper on a electronic cutting machine, is that it was just tearing the paper up. And so when I saw her presentation, I was like, oh, snap. Okay. So cutting vinyl pieces, very intricate, delicate type stuff, is a breeze on the Cricut. So
that's interesting.
I've used it a lot.
It's a nice toy to have. Toys. That's what you guys love, is your toys. I don't like really, a lot of people saying they don't like really small pieces either because we can't see or whatever. I know you have a hard stop, so I was just keeping an eye on the time for you. Is there any other quick questions for Brandi before we go? She has somewhere else to be, but we really appreciate having her here. We'll see. There's always that slow delay in your questions coming up.
Right. Right.
I had one, it went right out of my head. So there you go. We gotta love it when our questions go. What is HTV? So if people don't know what HTV is, what is that?
It is heat transfer vinyl. So most of the vinyl that people think about, it's got an adhesive backing to it, so you can stick it on like signs or whatever. But heat transfer vinyl is only sticky when you apply heat to it.
Okay.
So typically people use HTV when they're putting a design on clothing. That's the main thing that most people think about, is when they're doing like a design on a clothing. But I discovered through Abby that you can actually put it on cardstock. So I just actually love putting just different designs on cardstock and then embellishing it one way or the other.
Excellent. So there's a question on that, which is vinyl better than cardstock for snowflakes?
HTV, I think, yes. But you could also use permanent vinyl as well. You could design a whole card in that, A2 size or whatever, and, place it directly on the card with the adhesive type of vinyl. The problem is that if you mess up in placement, now you've kind of just messed up your whole design. Right. So I like the HTV because I can put it on the card, I can move it, and then once it's down and I put my press on it, it's not going anywhere.
Makes sense. Excellent. Somebody's asking, how is Harriet doing? You would know that.
Harriet is great. Harriet's my assistant.
Oh, okay. I was going
And
to say, who is Harriet? So there you go.
she is she's my crafting assistant, and she probably knows more about my business than I do.
There you go. We need those. We need all that kind of thing. So,
Yes. No, Harriet's been with us since the very first summit. She was active in the community, and my assistant at the time. She went on to bigger and better things, and so I just reached out to her and I said, "Hey, you have a job? Do you have a job? Do you want a job?" And she was like, "Sure." And so, no, she's a very valuable asset to our team.
Oh, that's awesome. And that's great. So people are just saying thank you, because thank you for being here. Thank you. We always learn something new from you.
Aw,
So
thank you.
for being part of the summit. There's a few of the comments coming in. We appreciate you being part of the summit and supporting us. And we like to support your summit as well. So your next one's in March again, or is it?
Yes, that's correct.
So if you're a card maker and you don't know about Brandi's Card Making Summit, which I can't believe you don't know about it, but if you don't know about it.
And I would say even scrapbookers would get something out of attending the summit. You can sign up for the VIP waitlist if you want. Just go to cardmakersuccesssummit.com and we'll let you know when we start opening the doors. But there are so many techniques that are shown in our card designs that can be applied to a bigger format. For scrapbook pages. So.
Yeah, and that's our message here.
Yeah, I always say that no matter what you like to do, watch all the videos. Yes, attend of the summits, because what you see there, you can learn and put it onto your own paper and whatever format you want. So do it.
And that's our
blending, stenciling, stamping, paper piercing, paper piercing, all of those techniques can be expanded to a larger format.
Oh, somebody had never heard of HPV. I'm glad I asked. So that was interesting. So there you go. So I thank you so much, Brandi, for being part of this. We really appreciate you coming on live with us, contributing.
Thank you.
To the summit. We've really enjoyed having you here. So thank you. And everyone, we will be back with Bet in about an hour. So or half an hour.
Guys.
I don't remember.
Happy crafting. Take care.